Hello, Comets. Happy to be coming to you with another video update, this time around to talk about our WIG process here at CCC. So lots of exciting details to run through. Wanted to make sure that I got this out via video. It gets a little bit easier to explain as I work through this PowerPoint with you and kind of show you where we are as a college now with our wildly important goal process. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. We can jump into the PowerPoint here. So this is just kind of an update as to where we stand, like I said, on the wildly important goal, and to let you know where we are now, where we are heading, and what the next steps are going to look like. So let's just jump right in. The design team met with Franklin Covey for 2 full days, September 11th and 12th, and that was really just a deep dive into our data. To really see what we are doing as an institution when it comes to not only retention and completion, but just generally how our students are performing. As you've heard me talk about many times since the start of my tenure, my want and a strong desire to democratize our data. What that really means is that we're making it available to everybody to be able to see. I firmly believe that it's pretty tough to change when you don't know what's happening with regard to the data. So we dove in, as I said, with the design team and found to, I would say, not a ton of surprise, not because it was necessarily anything we were expecting, but because nationally, community colleges struggle with their retention and completion rates. And we are very much in line with the national averages in terms of what our retention and completion rates look like. We also, as we were trying to figure out, okay, as we set this kind of 50,000 foot wildly important goal for the institution, what are the ways that we could find some early wins as opposed to having to wait for 2, 3, 4 years? So that was another thing that was on the mind of the design team. As I get into this, though, I want to make sure I stress that as you're hearing and seeing some of this data, many of you for the first time, this isn't anyone's fault. It doesn't matter whether you've been here for a year or 25 years. This is just where we are as an institution. No one's going to take the blame for this. It's really just kind of setting us up for the baseline in terms of where we're going to go to improve ourselves as a college. So just again, I think it's kind of human nature when you are looking at data and it isn't maybe as good as what you thought or what you had hoped for, that we kind of take that personally. And while that's not a terrible thing, because I think personal investment breeds the want to do better, I don't want folks to take this as a, you're just kind of getting beaten down and that we're not doing anything right. That couldn't be further from the truth. We found issues that we want to solve, and we're very confident that we can get those solved, but it's important that everybody plays a part in that. And so I'm going to get you, as we move through this PowerPoint, kind of get you well versed into what this process is going to look like now that the overall WIG has been set. So what do the data tell us? Our completion rates are 5-year average. And again, remember, completion rates are lagging indicators, meaning that they have happened in the past. We can't do anything to influence the past. We're looking for the future. The hard thing with completion rates is they take a long time to get that data. It takes 2, 3, 4 years to get the data to look at. So we had to look at our 2014 to 2019 completion rate. A couple of reasons why you do this. Again, it's a 5-year look back, so that's the direction that we went in. You'll notice that 2020, 2021, and 2022 are not on there. Main reason for that is you very likely will end up with skewed data because of COVID. So we wanted to look kind of at the pre-COVID, knowing that, again, as you've heard me say many times, we're not going back. We can't do the things that we did 2014 to 2019 and expect the same results in this new world order. But this is the data that we have. So this is what we're using. So most community colleges base their completion rates off of 150% completion. What that really means is it takes our students longer than, if it's a 2-year degree, on average, our students will take 3 years to get it. Why is that, you might ask? Well, over 70% of CCC students are part-time. So when you talk about a 2-year degree, you're talking about a student that's going full-time. That's where that's coming from. So our 150% completion rate is 17%. That's a couple of ticks below the national average, which is the low to mid 20th percentages. So that was one area that we dug into. And again, we saw that certainly there's some improvement there. Also want to talk to you really quickly about equity gaps. You've heard me probably say that word quite a bit. What that means, essentially all that an equity gap is that it compares your minority students to your white students. And if you see big disparities in terms of, let's say that our white students finished at 20 percentile or 20 percentage points higher than our Native American students, that would tell us that we weren't serving our Native American students in the way that they need to be served in order for them to be successful. That is an equity gap. The good news for us is we're actually much lower on our equity gaps. Things look pretty tight. They could get better, but they're within 3 or 4 percentage points, which again is, I think, something that we can certainly be proud of and something that we want to continue to build on. This is another one. Again, we're right in line with the national average. It doesn't mean it's a good thing, but our male students are finishing at lower rates than our female students. This, I think you could probably explain this in a number of different ways. Fewer male students means fewer male completers. Certainly that's part of it. But again, this data is 2014 to 2019. So it's looking through that 5-year span. Sometimes there are different hurdles for our male students, and certainly our female students have just as many hurdles, but we do see our female students finishing more than our male students. So that's a gender gap, and that's another thing for us to kind of keep in mind. Retention rates. This is where I would say some of the more troubling information came from as we were looking at the data. We lose roughly a quarter of our students every semester. So roughly 25% of our students do not come back from fall to spring. That's fairly troubling. It actually gets even more troubling when we look fall to fall. We lose about half of our students, roughly half of our students from fall to fall semester. So that means any given year, we've lost half the student population that was coming to us. And again, there are certainly reasons that we want to fix, and that's why we're digging into this. But there's also explainable reasons as well in terms of why we may lose students. They may be getting work earlier than anticipated and not continuing on with college. We would argue that's probably not the best thing for them. We would love for them to continue and be able to work. But again, it's not always the reality. There are also, again, there's some certainly positives that may come out of this. But when you look at a retention rate of roughly 50%, we know that we can and need to do a lot better. Again, in our retention rates, nothing that stood out from an equity gap standpoint. Again, very positive news there that we are working kind of across all of our student demographics, and there isn't one that's leaving us more than the other. So again, there's still a lot leaving us, and we've got to figure that out. And that's what this process that we're about to embark on is all about. So we are going to look at the measurements. So when we talk about all this data, you can very, very quickly get overwhelmed by just the overall sheer amount of data there that is there. What all we're really talking about is we're gonna pick a subsection that we think if we solve for that subsection, we'll likely solve for the entire institution. That subsection is going to be first time in college students. So first time in higher education students. Why did we pick that? A couple of reasons. One, you'll see on the slide there, our first time in college students, less than 6 in 10 are successful in their coursework. So if you think about a student who's never been in higher ed, if less than 6 in 10, so just over 50% of those students are finishing their coursework successfully, and what we mean by successful is a C or better earned in their courses, then that's troubling. And we certainly need to hone in on that and figure out why it is that they're not being successful. Also, first time in college students, tend to need more supports than those students who have been in college and kind of know the drill. Many of our first time in college students are first gen students, meaning no one in their family's ever been to college, so they don't know about this thing. What this shows us, though, is that if we go after kind of this population, the population of first time in college, that if we solve for that, we're likely to solve for a lot of the issues that we're seeing with retention and completion. I would note here too, now, you may or may not hear, there's a relatively common term that's bandied about that's first time, full time. We are not looking at our full-time students because that's not our audience. Our audience is part-time students. And it doesn't really matter what we try to do to incentivize our students to go full-time. It's not their reality. So we're meeting students where they are, which is absolutely appropriate. And looking at, okay, it's your first time, you're probably going to be part-time. How can we help you to get to where you're going? Because we know that obviously if you're not successful in your coursework, that's going to hamper retention and completion. And you're probably not going to come back to us if you were not successful. I talked about, if we solve for this, we're going to solve for most of the other demographics as well. Not all of them, but most of them. Also, we thought that student engagement is very much a key. We want to keep students engaged as much as possible. Being a commuter campus, right? We don't have housing on campus, so it is a little bit tougher. We don't have a huge sporting program. Obviously, we have our cross-country teams and super proud of what they do, but some community colleges certainly have housing and a plethora of sports teams. It's much easier for them to keep their students engaged when they're staying on campus. So student engagement came up as a key. And again, the more likely the students, or the more they are engaged, the more likely they are to persist. All right, so that leads us to our college-wide WIG and Sub-WIG. So drum roll, please. Here is what the design team has identified. Again, 50,000 foot. I'm going to talk about what this looks like for all of our areas here in just a second, but this is what we're looking to do for our WIG and our Sub-WIG. So the overall WIG is we want to improve our college-wide retention rate by 10% over 2 years, starting next fall. I want you to hear that. This is not something that's happening tomorrow or happening Wednesday or Friday. We're going to take our time. I'm going to show you a timeline on the next slide. We're going to take our time to get this thing right. So it's not going to be rushed. It's not going to be something where everyone's like just running around like mad men and mad women because they're trying to get all this taken care of. No, we're going to walk this out very deliberately and get to a place that by the time fall 24 rolls around, we're going to be ready to start doing the things that we need to do to increase our retention rates by essentially 5% a year for a total of 10% over 2 years, starting in fall 24. We also came up with a couple of sub-WIGs. Sub-WIGs are related to the overall WIG, and they will inform and help that WIG come to fruition. So essentially, as you see, they kind of feed up into the overall WIG. If we feel like if we increase support for our learners, and that we're going to measure that by our CCC, the Community College Survey of Student Engagement, we want to increase that. We're being fairly aggressive there. We want to go up 15 percentage points in 2 years. We're going to have another measurement this spring for a baseline there. Our last baseline was 46.1, which was our lowest score in the CCC. We want to bring that up. And again, when we talk about support, we're talking about support and engagement. That's the question that we're asking our students. We also want to increase our course success rates for first time in college students from 59 to 70%. So an 11% increase there by May of 2026. All right. So you're thinking, wait a minute, I thought I was going to have a process, or I was going to be involved in this process. And I thought that we got to choose our WIGs. And the answer to that is you absolutely do. All the design team was doing was setting that North Star that you've heard me talking about. Now we have handed that process off to PACE, the Presidential Advisory Committee on Excellence, and that is now going to move down throughout the college, all the way from our frontline staff, and then work its way back up. So let's talk about what that means. And this is a little bit hard to read, but just bear with me and I'll kind of work you through it. So the design has happened. We are working now with PACE to identify all of our team leads. Many of our team leaders will be department heads or directors. Some of them will not be. Think about like on the faculty side. Either way, we will have likely 40 or 50 team leads from across the college. The team leads work with their group and establish their WIG. So every group, every team across the college gets to set their own WIG. I'll say that again. Every team across the college gets to set their own WIG. The idea is the team would set their WIG based on the college's North Star WIG, which is to improve retention by 10% starting in fall 2024 over a 2-year span. So all the teams get to look at the work that they do and say, okay, our WIG is going to be, you know, how it is that we inform the overall college WIG. But that is completely and totally up to the teams. Senior administration will not have anything to do with that. Even middle administration will not have anything to do with that. This is up to the teams because you all are doing the work. And so you'll know, okay, what if we made more student outreach? What if we made more student contacts? How might that inform the retention rate? Those are the types of things that you get to choose from, and you're not going to have to do it alone. So as part of us working through with Franklin Covey on this process, all of our teams are going to have the opportunity to meet with and start establishing their WIGs with their team leads. So like I said, we are now just starting. And again, this process is, we're going to deliberately walk this through. We're going to identify our team leads in the coming weeks. Franklin Covey is going to work with each of those areas so that they can establish their WIGs. The idea is here, we want ownership. And obviously, if the teams choose their own WIGs, they're much more likely to own that than something that's chosen for them. And like I said, you're the experts. You do this work every day. It would not make sense for us to choose a WIG for you. We set the North Star, and now the work comes to each area as to how your work can inform that North Star. And again, each team WIG contributes to either the Sub-WIG or the college-wide WIG. We will have weekly meetings, as we talked about. And again, that's during Comet Hour. That's one of the reasons we moved Comet Hour college-wide. So we're going to continue to do that and make sure that we're holding each other accountable to what we said we would do. So that's when those meetings will occur. Those meetings are, we're talking 10, 15 minutes, not any longer than that each week. It's so as a part of Comet Hour, you take 10 to 15 minutes, you talk about where you're at, and then, you know, talk about your next steps. Again, you're not going to do anything right away. So the team leads will be identified, then they will start working with their teams. We have time to get this measured out. It's not going to be rushed, and it's not going to feel haphazard. So just keep that in mind as we move through this process. I am sure that you will have questions. If you do, certainly, please feel free to reach out. You can visit with me. You can send me an email, drop in. It wasn't one of the presidential pop-ups. However you'd like to do that. If you want to talk to your supervisor, that's fine as well. As I said, we have handed this off to PACE, and PACE is made up of essentially our dean level and higher positions, and also the faculty leadership and the staff leadership have a seat at PACE as well. So please feel free to reach out. Again, more information forthcoming as we identify the team leaders and then start working with Covey to set up their meetings to start the process of each team identifying a WIG that makes sense for them. So that is where we stand today. And very much, like I said, wanted to get you the info so that you knew where we were at, where we stood today, and what this timeline was going to look like. Very measured, very deliberate, not going to be rushed. Very much, though, looking forward to what this is going to look like, and excited now as well, because we've got our North Star. And as we look at improving the retention rate, it's only if we solve again for that. We talked about solving for the first time in college students. So at the bigger level, if we solve for retention, we're going to solve for completion as well. If you're retaining students, more likely they are going to finish. So that'll do it for this update. Appreciate you hanging with me for this 20 minutes to watch the PowerPoint. As I said, please reach out with questions. We can't answer them if we don't know that you have them. So reach out, ask questions, and we will be in touch. Your team leads will be in touch, and really looking forward to getting this process started. So hope you have a great week. Take care and go Comets.